Welcome back, everybody. Hopefully we'll have a nice, lively session here, and while we're waiting for the post-lunch coffee to kick in. It's great to have you all here. I imagine there'll be a few people trickling in, but with this session, we want to talk about policy coherence and multi-level governance. I'm going to introduce the panelists first, and then I'll just frame our discussion. We have some questions for each of the panelists, including I have the weird role of asking myself questions, so that'll be fun. We'll see how I dodge my own questions as we go forward. But let me go ahead and introduce our panels. I'll just go across the stage. We have Laura Hedl, who's Policy Officer from the European Commission, and is somebody we all know and enjoy having in our presence. Next is Elena Simeon. She's an international project expert. She's leading the capacities work across Europe, as well as a key partner in driving urban transitions partnership and other activities. She's a key feature here. So we're delighted to come and join you in Romania. Next is a mission board member, Gabrielle Cuștan, and look forward to hearing her thoughts from her perspective and work with the mission board at a high level. And then on the far end, Miljenko Sedlar. He's the head of climate for Northwest Croatia Regional Energy and Climate Agency, and he's a member of the Mission Adaptation Hub. And so one of the things we want to talk about is how climate adaptation, climate resilience, and the decarbonization work really fit together in this discussion. So with that, we know from our work and discussions at the European level and earlier today, achieving climate neutrality is not only about individual projects, but it's about coherence between EU initiatives, national government strategies, and local implementation work. Through both the city's mission and our work in NetZeroCities as the implementation platform to support the cities, we've seen the collaboration across governance levels is critical. We use a lot of jargon in our work, and multi-level governance risks being one of those that gets used way too much and often means everything and nothing at the same time. But it is a critical factor in success in implementing the work of the missions. We have, obviously today with the M100, we have national platforms, and there are two other events happening today in other countries similar to this one, where cities are coming together with national government representatives and other stakeholders to talk about how to work together to align policy, to understand how resources and capital can work to support the cities in implementing this work. Both in Bulgaria and Greece today, they're having their first, like you all did here last year when we came together. So we're seeing a lot of this work build out, and it's one of the key objectives and capacities to support and assist in the development of these efforts. Today we want to share insights at all levels, so we've got all levels represented here, about how the work to bring coherence across the European national and city levels is progressing, highlighting both what is making a positive difference and where we still need to push forward and make improvements and continue to build that alignment. We come together here in meetings like this and we talk to each other, but we also know the work that happens outside these rooms in between these meetings is where we really need to make a difference. And that's what we need to keep our eyes on. So with that, let's begin. And Laura, I'll start with you. Last month was an intensive moment of discussion in Brussels, given new directions and priorities. We're still waiting for the details of some of that to take full shape. We don't want to spend any more time on that here today because that's just speculation at this point. And we've spent a huge amount of time talking about this already. What we want to talk about today is to hear from Laura on her observations about the advancements among national support activities like this, as well as across the EU institutions. Laura, what would you like to highlight in terms of good results? And equally important, what are you seeing that we need to continue to focus on related to the critical roles national and EU representatives have in enabling implementation?
Thank you, Thomas. And thank you for the question. I have to say I have the advantage or disadvantage, depending how you look at it, to be one of only 2 people who have been working for the mission since day one. So when you talk about the road traveled, I would know it. I walked it, I pedaled it, I drove it, however you want to name it. And as opposed to colleagues who have joined in the last 2-3 years, I know how difficult things were for us in the beginning, because one thing that Europe is not missing, I think, are urban initiatives. Because most of you will know that on the 3rd of December is a huge day for cities. We will launch the new EU policy for cities, the new EU agenda for cities. And as part of that exercise, we did an inventory of urban-related initiatives. I am happy to report that we have 70 of them spread across various EU streams of funding. But you can imagine that a few years ago when we launched the mission and we wanted to introduce yet another urban initiative, we met a lot of resistance, right? The first question was why? We have enough to cater to cities. And our response was simple. We are doing this because despite of these initiatives that we have been implemented for the last 40 to 50 years, we still do not have a climate neutral city. We don't have a documented climate neutral city. We don't have models that we can offer to all the other cities in Europe as a recipe for climate neutrality. And in this context, and speaking of things that we are proud of in the mission, we launched the instrument of the Climate City Contract. And what that's supposed to do is supposed to take your thinking from project level. A lot of worthy projects have been implementing along decades, and yet nothing had added up to create that climate neutral city that we all want to achieve. Why is that? It's because we were putting together different forms of action plans, right? But what was meeting on one side was the commitment of everybody in the city, that ecosystem that was mentioned several times during various interventions. And on the other side, of course, the national support, which should come in the form of implementation, in the form of governments, in the form of finance. So I'm very proud today that we have 103 cities in Europe already that have submitted a Climate City Contract, that have received a mission label for their effort. This also creates a community because all cities have rallied around the same template as a document, but also the same process, because more than anything, the Climate City Contract is not just a piece of paper, stackable piece of paper, but it's also a process that the city undergoes, right? Lobbying its local stakeholders, lobbying the non-national level, involving the NGOs, the private sectors, and all the other members of the ecosystem that were mentioned here today. Another thing I think that I'm very proud of is the fact that we do not stop here. And this is where most other action plans stop, right? The Climate City Contract introduces another section that's on an investment strategy, right? So now that a plan is in place, we also want to accompany these cities through implementation. In this sense, we have already a long-standing relationship with the European Investment Bank, who were part of evaluating these Climate City contracts and who continue now to assist mission cities as they advance in this journey. Of course, the Capital Hub of the Net Zero Cities Mission Platform is also there to help. And looking forward a bit, we are in the process, as you said, without speculation, of negotiating the shape and form of the next multi-annual financial framework. So that is the European Union budget for 2028 to 2034. And this is a very important time where I would ask you as cities, as professionals who work with cities, to raise your voice, to lobby your national level so that the channels, let's say, for us to fund the urban transition in your cities can be put in place, because that will only happen if the national levels agree to it.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Elena, a couple questions for you. I'll combine the first two because they're really woven together and then follow after that. From your experience with capacities supporting the mission cities and the mission, as well as with Driving Urban Transitions Partnership, what do you see as key enablers of stronger cooperation between European, national, regional, and local levels? Related to that, what are the main challenges in balancing multi-level governance with a multidisciplinary approach where research, policy, and practice all work together as opposed to compete for resources and attention?
Short question, Thomas, very short. Thank you very much. With capacities and driving urban transitions, the connection is strong. With Driving Urban Transition Partnership, we started to fund research and innovation projects for urban transformation since a long time ago. And with capacities, we build capacities, hopefully, in the entire Europe to build small M100s everywhere in Europe. I think the message is quite clear. In terms of key enablers, I think the Commission did a very good work in NetZeroCities too, by getting into the entire Europe to contribute to this common language. We all need to speak the same language and have aligned strategies to make sure we can actually fulfill the mission. That would be a first step. And I think more or less we are there together with the work you've done and the local partners from capacities in Europe. There, I think, and I guess we now count in capacities up to 10 national platforms, we say, that are operational. That means in one way they have a formal governance acknowledged, or they have some formal backup. With this, you definitely need some sort of an aligned approach and recognize that national level to make things work. You won't get to any policy coherence if you don't align the levels, the strategic levels in the countries. And with this dialogue, which takes a lot of time, and I have Miljenko here from Croatia, he knows well what it means to bring ministers and ministries together to talk the same language, not to mention to get to a common program dedicated to cities. That will take time. Then we need, besides this formal recognition, you need some sort of an organizational structure to work itself. That's definitely something we saw in Sweden, Spain, and other advanced countries. You need a structured approach, making people meeting together, sharing knowledge, and making decisions together. And I think that's the most problematic in terms of making decisions together. That's challenging. I'm answering both, I hope. And then, definitely as key enablers, you need this European network or global network, a space of trust and safety where exchange can happen. That's what the mission offers and what the mission does with all its projects, but also with the connections with Urban Transition Mission or other formats. Therefore, with the power of the exchange and the power to learn from each other and explore together things, I think we can get to our first ambition as I started my intervention, that we can achieve some policy coherence, but it takes all these steps to and fro to make it happen.
Thanks. And before we jump to the last question I had for you in advance, just to follow up, you said there are 10 sort of operational national platforms, right? And many are coming in online in addition to that as we speak, almost literally. If you think about those 10 and potentially the experiences that they've had so far, without sort of calling out favorites necessarily, but what are some of the more notable things that they're doing functionally that are changing their ability to support implementation?
I would say collaboration with within their national context. Some have strong research oriented beginning, so to say. So we do have Sweden and Spain, to name them precisely, that started with from universities, and then with a strong dialogue with cities, they succeeded to bring in private actors and all other agencies and ministries, depending on the countries. That's very specific to them. But then we emerged as a funding agency, started initiative, and I think Reghea in Croatia is doing the same. So that could be a new model to make things work in the future. At least from what we see now. Then in Europe now, we have different groups. Most of them are led by research or universities or research institutes. However, the cities networks are coming strong to connect to the existing initiatives, and I think you know well from NetZeroCities perspective what they are doing.
Great, thank you. We're also starting to see a real push to more strategically engaged businesses in this process. There's both sort of at a European level as well as within individual member states now, a number of sessions around engaging city and industry together around climate resilience in an effort to build a more strategic approach to not only what needs to happen on the climate side, but how that fits within the economic development strategies, how certain sectors are poised for investment and growth, et cetera. What, from your perspective, what are you seeing there, whether in Romania now or in other places where we can expect to look into the future and see more progress in this regard?
In Romania, I think my colleagues from the platform could talk a bit more about that. We, I think, started this process actually with our 10 cities, because in the preparations of their CCC, they had to involve business. So they already have some sort of a group to work with. These are the first steps in a structured way. Furthermore, us as a platform, we have just opened, as our director has announced in the morning, we have opened up to get in more companies that would be interested in supporting our work. That's something that's happening now. And I guess, Milenko, you can also add.
If I may,
yeah,
just make it a bit more dynamic as well, is that we in Croatia feel a very strong dedication for the Ministry of Finance actually now. You mentioned resilience, and that's their main driver, the resilience of the financial systems. So now in Croatia we have a platform for sustainable finance of these kind of projects. And it's really kicking in because everybody is just following the money. So we are leveraging that. Well, that's the truth, everybody needs that, and everybody is, and we are now have, the biggest push for this is not the climate ministry, it's Ministry of Finance. So it's working very well. It's connecting the people who are in need with the people who have the money from different levels. So it's working now.
Great, thanks so much. Gabrielle, from the mission board's perspective, where do you see the biggest gaps in policy coherence between EU level ambitions for climate neutral cities and the actual implementation capacity at national and local levels? What mechanisms could help bridge these gaps by 2030?
Well, does it work? No. This one. First of all, when we speak about climate neutrality, we actually speak about the green transformation of the cities. And in order to have this transformation as a systemic change, we need to get everybody on board. In this systemic transformation, there is no room for anybody to be left behind. So the clearly defined roles and responsibilities of all the stakeholders, this is what is very important in this process. Therefore, strengthening collaboration and multi-level governance, which was mentioned here several times before the lunch break. But probably that means that this is really important issue and moment to concentrate on. So this is what we need to work on and find solutions how to implement that in the best way. This transformative change, what is complicated about it? That it requires changes in individual and collective behavioral patterns, the way of operation, the way everything works. And you know, those changes might not be welcome because it might be a costly way and might require some maybe personal sacrifices. So it's also very important to set what we are, what is our main goal, and in that green transformation, and so what will be incentivized, what will be can stay unchanged, and what should be totally transformed in, I don't know, either giving the carrots or or other way. Also, I think I will not surprise anybody by saying that funding is one of the main gaps. And in addition to the complexity of the green transformation, it's also a very, very expensive process. And speaking only about those mission cities, the cities that are participating in the cities mission, it is estimated that to reach their green transformation by 2030, which is basically tomorrow, we need 650 billion euros. So in order to close this funding gap, it's obvious that public money will not be enough. So we need to look for some other funding solutions, also include private money, and saying funding gap, I not only mean that insufficient funding, but sometimes that funding is available, however inaccessible due to very complicated regulation or some bureaucracy. So this is also one of the things that should be considered. And in addition to financial resources, we also have an issue with the human resources, because people with the right competences, knowledge, skills, this is what we need for the green transformation, and not only in the market, but also in the administration, in the city's administration. In addition to the innovation, which is also an inseparable part when we speak about the green transformation, we need to invest into people, because it's not only about technological solutions, it's also about social investments, and speaking about the innovation, probably the biggest issue at the moment is that climate-friendly solutions are still of experimental nature at the moment, and they should become market-ready solutions, in fact. And also, they are more expensive than the business as usual. So I think we all need to seek that green choice would become a default choice. So that's the goal of the whole process. And I could probably continue, but I will finish with the data, which was also mentioned today, but that really constitutes a big gap, because timely access to accurate and relevant data is really a big challenge at all levels.
Great, thanks. Yeah, and I do think we're starting to see a number of cities and in the national context, a number of conversations around trying to better organize existing capital into things that are more structured for this purpose. And I think, Milenko, your comments are in keeping with that very much. So now you get to imagine there's two of me here. And so the question I'm going to ask myself is, how can we make policy coherence a lived experience for cities rather than an abstract policy goal? And we've spent a fair bit of time working with all of the mission cities to understand what the policy innovation priorities are at a large scale, at a mission scale. But now we're taking it down to much more specific activities, because that's what it's going to take if we're going to overcome the challenges that we have and get to actual implementation. And this week, in fact, today and tomorrow, there's policy innovation work going on here with sessions on infrastructure design and cycling. Bucharest Sector 2 and Bucharest Metropolitan, along with Alba Iulia, are rolling up their sleeves to get very specific about policy and regulatory changes necessary to implement that activity here. So that's just one example. Before I came here yesterday, I was in Sofia, and I spent a fair bit of time with the city there discussing some of their energy transition work. And I can tell you that everything they need to do to implement the transition, and that includes I think it's the second largest district energy system in Europe, is almost entirely dependent on national government. And so these are the conversations where we need to get very specific and very detailed, not about, oh, we need to make changes, but we need to make these changes in this place for these reasons. And that's where the work is right now. NetZeroCities put together with our colleagues at the Commission some policy innovation working sessions on district energy, which is a topic I have a lot of experience with and maybe love more than I should. Depends who you ask. But it was evident from that conversation that cities and national representatives have only just begun, which is a little disconcerting, frankly, how long we've been at this. They've only just begun to get to the discussions they need to have with each other about the changes that have to happen in order to achieve climate neutrality. Have to happen. It's not going to happen without real significant policy and regulatory change at national level. Cannot happen without that. There are also synergies to be had there, and some of this is around the quality and consistency of engagement in these national and city discussions. I think, Elena, you mentioned the need to build trust and to set relationships so that people can engage with each other in a non-politicized way and talk about the policy needs and the regulatory needs and get into a problem-solving mode versus debating who's right about how they describe it. And that's critical work, and it's an area where I think we've been working with the EU to try to create those kinds of conversations and make those spaces available, and we'll, I think, continue to need to ask the EU and the Commission to help ensure we get those conversations to happen. Because in some cases it's difficult to get the parties in the room to build that trust, and that's one of our challenges going forward. So this is very hard work, and it's very specific to each city, each national government, to go through the detailed work there. I think, Laura, you want to chime in on this, or are you getting ready to hit me with the microphone?
No, but speaking of the national level, right, we saw it in action this morning here, and it was quite impressive to have seen those 6 ministries coming together. In the first years of the mission, we would make the rounds with mission manager of various countries, and believe it or not, it was often the rule that 4 or 5 ministries that each dealt partially with urban issues. Because we were there and we had convened them for the meeting, they were discussing the first time urbanization, urban issues. It just felt that cities were everybody's problem, which made them nobody's problem in the end, right? There was no ownership, no center of gravity, and so on. So we were happy to act as the convener of that in a first instance, but it cannot all rely on the shoulders of the Commission. We carry a lot of weight and we are happy to do so, but we also function based on a mandate that comes from the national level. We will go all the way, but we will stop exactly where our mandate stops. And after that, it's the national level that comes in. So our setting up of this capacities network, right, in which we would like to ideally see, and we are seeing that happening now, a national hub like M100 set up in every country is to provide precisely this space where ministries can cut together with the research and innovation environment, with the NGOs, with the private sector, industry, and so on, and create this national level change. On our side, we can, of course, advise, incentivize the national level, but there are such things as the proportionality principle, the subsidiarity principle, and again, we ourselves act on a mandate from the national level. I have to say, the national platform in many countries, Elena already mentioned Spain and Sweden, have proven to be the magical tool, I think, that we all needed, and I was very happy to see again that in Romania that proves to be true, because they built that consensus, that pressure, and ultimately they brought the national level in. So then it's an internal conviction, right? That is not just the message that's been hammering down from the European Commission, right? But it's nice to be met in our discussion halfway with the national level and to have some form of understanding there. I think the local level is on board. Many of these national mission platforms are working with networks of cities. Sweden is working with 48 cities. Austria has 47, I believe. We have 26 cities in Portugal, 13 now in Romania, and many more to come, if I understand correctly. There are other countries that are looking at you with great interest. For instance, Portugal is also on a spy and apply mission to see whether the M100 model will be transferred there. Just 2 weeks ago, I was meeting with the colleagues in Turkey, in Istanbul, and I know for sure they will copy your model. They will be knocking on your door in the next week because they have received funds from the instrument for pre-accession. I know for the first time, I think, in a M100 event, colleagues from the Western Balkan are in the room, the mission cities of Sarajevo, of Elbasan, of Podgorica. Welcome, colleagues, for the first time in this discussion, and of course to Harmon Missions. Please take note, and maybe this inspires something in your own countries. Just maybe to finish my thought, something important happened on the 15th of October. We were having the European Week of Regions and Cities. President von der Leyen was taking the stage, was speaking to the Covenant of Mayors, and anticipating a bit the publication on the 3rd of December of this EU Agenda for Cities. She committed that there will be a link between the climate city contracts, as we have them under the cities mission, and the next EU budget, right? And we're talking here about a formalized link. While that is being set in place, and we don't know yet how it will look, I think the magical key still sits in the pockets of the national level. So keep up the good work. We need you also at the European Commission level. It's very heartwarming to see the messages this morning from the mayors in which you mentioned European projects and what the difference they made in your cities. We need you to continue to lobby with the national level so that we can deliver those projects for you and that change on the ground that you need in the most efficient and timely way, because always these projects happen through the mediation of the national level. In this sense, you don't need to go knock on the doors of 6 ministries. I understand you can now just walk and knock on the door of M100, and then you have a chance to speak with them in this common space of collaboration. And I think if you put your voices together at cities, your voice will be much, much stronger for that reason.
Thanks, Laura. Miljenko, taking it down to your role at the regional and working very closely with local government and national government, very interested to hear you talk a little bit about this, not only from the perspective of how we get to net zero, but also with adaptation as a key driver and a more holistic approach to climate resilience. You work directly on both of those issues, and you've had many discussions around how they're being integrated both at the missions level as well as within the national context. Most cities already do this work together because that makes the most sense for them. What insights from the adaptation mission as well as your work with the National Adaptation Hubs project help other cities integrate resilience and adaptation goals into their climate neutrality pathways? And more broadly, how can cities balance mitigation and adaptation efforts that often come from different directions in order to ensure they're successful?
Well, there's 8 minutes left, so
I think we have a little more.
I'm just joking. No, I'm going to start with something that a couple of days ago, one of my kids was asking me, what am I doing for work? That he needed that for school. And then I tried to explain a multi-level governance. And he said, can I not go to school? So jokes aside, we've seen one of the slides where all the platforms were shown, the capacities, the NetZeroCities, what I'm coordinating on EU level now is the National Adaptation Hubs. Bring that into equation as well, and then you have yet another platform. We will be trying to avoid that, honestly, so that's why we already have discussions how to connect it, and you very well said, Thomas, there are a lot of cities, including Zagreb, which I was taking part into this Climate contract. We have embedded resilience into the Climate contract. We already are discussing how to basically make these connections between different platforms and how to, not burden cities, but not only cities, but also national levels with additional, I would say, requests, but how to combine all of those things, because don't get me wrong, I think that the resilience of the cities and the infrastructure is even a greater issue than decarbonization currently, because you can see all around Europe what is happening and how big the damages are now that are, post different types of infrastructure in cities, but also out of the cities as well. So our project just kick-started, so on November 1st, but we already started to work. And I'll just tell you an analogy of, when we started with the Climate contract of Zagreb. If there was no template, I would have just 3 measures in there. It would be just connected to the governance, to the spatial planning, and the financial systems. It's because what we need is systemic transformation. Cities had SecUps, cities had different, different tools, different documents in the past, but they were developed and nothing has been done. Because I'm now speaking from the Croatian perspective, we've been working, and I mean probably we are the world champions in working in silos in Croatia, but this is something that we tried to break. Our approach was a bit different in Croatia because we started with the National Energy and Climate Plans development, and we started to work with the national level first. And what happened is that actually what struck in my mind is that we had 9 ministries together with cities and with academia, and we still have them. They're all on board. But one of the guys from the ministry said, okay, finally someone has built an arena of trust. That's very strong. So arena of trust where we can come and discuss and see, you know, because they are also under capacities on the national level. They don't have enough capacity to do things, and they are also seeking for good inputs from the local and regional level. So what we did build is this arena of trust, and this is something that works now. And in the adaptation or resilience part, we're not going to be reinventing anything. Those are the same people. Those are the same people everywhere. Those are the same ministries. I mean, we can talk about mitigation, adaptation, but we can talk about transport. We can talk about, you know, district heating system, as you mentioned. It's all infrastructure. It's all about, you know, how we work with that. So, and it's all about people. So the idea is basically to think differently, to work differently. That's the main message. Not, you know, I often use the word disruptive way of working, and I was really impressed by the deputy mayor of Vienna in the past. What you do, that is how it should be done. You know, you can easily, you know, by intervening in spatial planning and in budget planning, do a lot of things. For example, we have banned in Zagreb usage of natural gas in a couple of districts. Why not? It can be done. You have to provide alternative, obviously, but it can be done. We have to be bold and brave. And what we're doing, we're climate-proofing everything. This is the adaptation and resilience kicking in. So we have made climate-proofing mandatory for everything in Croatia. We've made it through climate law now, regardless, you know, from where it is being financed. And we know there are discussions now that it's going to be, you know, left out a bit, the climate-proofing, but we are carrying on with that, because if we invest millions and we're not climate-proofing that, what is going to happen with the next big storm? We'll have losses that are much bigger than the investments. So the idea is basically to build future-proof systems which are transformed, you know, not the way because we don't work good now, honestly. We are not in a good position currently, how we work. I still have time and stop talking about it.
We're totally fine. We're totally fine. No, thank you for that. And I think it's very clear as well, and it speaks to, I think, one of the overarching themes of this session, which is around coherence, because we have different platforms that come about in their own ways. And what we're trying to do is make sure that they don't add additional layers of effort, but actually allow, or what can we do to make it easier for people to work across them in an integrated fashion?
Yeah, I think it does seek for a bit of magic, because I used to work in the city. You know, if somebody came, oh, there is something, you know, which, oh God, not again. So we have to avoid this, because it could be threatening for what we do.
All right, well, to that end, we're each going to take about 30 seconds here and say what would be one specific, you're not going to be held to this, no one's filming this on our phones, don't put it on social media. What is one specific action that would improve policy coherence for cities in their quest to implement these actions? And I'll start with you, Malik.
Well, I'll just, you know, maybe carry on where I stopped, is that we should start working differently, even in the cities. How we, you know, develop our strategies. One big thing, for example, in Zagreb, I think that after 2030, we will not have climate city contracts. We will not have adaptation plans. We'll have just a city development plan, full stop. That would mean that we have embedded mitigation, adaptation, resilience, preparedness, everything into how we work. Otherwise, we're going to fail.
Gabrielle.
I will be very short here, and I think the main thing is not to have any policy for the city prepared without the city. I think better integration and higher integration of the cities into policy making and decision making is essential, because eventually the implementation of all those policies and strategies, they come to the local level for the implementation.
Great, thank you.
Very quickly, I would definitely say that I want capacities to brag about with 27 national platforms or small M100s. That's my take.
For me, I think I would want more and more national levels to realize that if they are to deliver on the commitments that they made on the European stage, on the international stage, those commitments will be delivered in their cities. And so I would like them to work closer with and for cities, first of all, and to give the European Commission a stronger mandate, for instance, to channel funding directly to cities in addition to the work that we are doing with the national level.
Thanks very much. And just to wrap up from my side, I would say the one thing I would do is have consistently across Europe cities given delegated authority to govern energy systems the way they govern water and sewer utilities, with a strong mandate around the outcomes that they want. Without that, cities are going to struggle to bring together the policy scale and capital needs to facilitate a timely transition. And we know that it's very easy to say, let's get national governments to change their regulations, but they've spent 40 years building those regulations and they're going to let go of them very slowly. And that's something we could no longer afford. So with that, thank you all for your attention. Look forward to the discussion to come and the rest of the afternoon. Thanks very much, everybody.